I want a divorce, Hannah. Ethan's voice crackled through the phone, each syllable like a shard of glass. My breath caught in my throat as I stood in the middle of the kitchen, dinner half prepared on the counter. The smell of garlic and onions hung in the air, but all I could focus on was the venom in his words. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You heard me," he spat. "I'm done. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of you." I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. "Ethan, we need to talk about this. You can't just—" "There's nothing to talk about," he interrupted. "I've already made up my mind. I'm moving out tonight." The line went dead, leaving me standing in stunned silence. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not after everything I had done to keep this family together. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Ethan had always been impulsive, but this was a new low. I had to act fast. I grabbed my car keys and drove to his office, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked through the glass doors, the receptionist gave me a sympathetic look. She must have heard the shouting from his office. I pushed open the door without knocking. Ethan was sitting at his desk, packing his things into a box. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. He finally looked up, his eyes cold and distant. "There's nothing to talk about, Hannah. I've made up my mind." "Why now? Why like this?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. "After everything we've been through, you owe me an explanation." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm tired, Hannah. Tired of pretending. Tired of this life. I want something different. And what about me? What about our life together?" I asked, my voice breaking. He shrugged, his indifference like a slap in the face. "You'll be fine. You're strong. You'll get through this." I felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce. "You don't get to just walk away, Ethan. You don't get to make this decision on your own." He stood up, his face hardening. "I already have. I'm leaving tonight. You can keep the house. I don't care." I stared at him, my mind reeling. This was it. The end of everything I had worked so hard to build. But as I looked at him, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. A chance to finally break free from the chains that had been holding me back. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "If that's what you want, then go. But don't expect me to be waiting for you when you change your mind." He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "You really mean that?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I'm done being your doormat, Ethan. I'm done letting you control my life. If you want a divorce, then that's what you'll get." For a moment, he just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then he picked up his box and walked past me without another word. I watched him go, a strange sense of relief washing over me. As I walked back to my car, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This was my chance to start over, to build a life that was truly my own. And I was going to take it. When I got home, I sat down at the kitchen table and started making a list. I needed to find a lawyer, figure out the finances, and start planning for my future. It was daunting, but I felt a sense of determination I hadn't felt in years. This was my moment, my chance to take control of my life and create something new. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The next morning, I sat in the lawyer's office, the sterile smell of paperwork and coffee filling the air. My head was still spinning from the events of the previous day. Ethan's words echoed in my mind, but I pushed them aside. I needed to focus. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand this is a difficult time for you," Mr. Callahan, my lawyer, said gently. "But filing these papers is the first step towards taking control of your life." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know. It's a lot to process." He handed me a pen. "Take your time. When you're ready, sign here." I took a deep breath and signed the papers, feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. This was real. There was no turning back now. As I left the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "We need to talk. Meet me at the house." My heart sank. What now? I drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, pacing in the living room. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. "Hannah, what the hell are you doing?" he demanded as soon as I walked in. "I'm taking control of my life," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He laughed bitterly. "Control? You think this is control? You're ruining everything." I crossed my arms, standing my ground. "No, Ethan. You ruined everything. I'm just picking up the pieces." He stepped closer, his face contorted with anger. "You think you can just walk away? You think you can just leave me?" "I don't think," I said, my voice firm. "I know." He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You don't get to make this decision alone, Hannah. We're in this together, whether you like it or not." I pulled away, my heart pounding. "Let go of me, Ethan." His eyes softened for a moment, and he released his grip. "Please, Hannah. Let's talk about this. We can fix it." I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. "No, Ethan. We can't. It's over." He slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "I can't lose you." I took a step back, my resolve hardening. "You already have." As I turned to leave, the front door opened, and Richard walked in, his presence filling the room. He looked between us, his expression unreadable. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice cold. "Ethan and I are getting a divorce," I said, my voice steady. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Is that so?" Ethan stood up, his face pale. "Dad, Save it," Richard snapped. "I've heard enough." He turned to me, his gaze piercing. "Hannah, are you sure this is what you want?" I nodded. "Yes, Richard. It's what I need." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Very well. But know this, Ethan. If you continue down this path, there will be consequences." Ethan's face twisted with anger. "What are you talking about?" Richard's expression hardened. "You're my son, but you've made a mess of your life. And if you drag Hannah down with you, I won't hesitate to cut you off. Do you understand?" Ethan's eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Richard said, his voice like steel. "This is your last chance, Ethan. Don't waste it." With that, he turned and left, leaving us standing in stunned silence. I felt a strange sense of vindication, but also a new layer of tension. This wasn't just about Ethan and me anymore. Richard had thrown down the gauntlet, and the stakes were higher than ever. Ethan sank back onto the couch, his face ashen. "What have I done?" he whispered. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of pity and resolve. "You've made your choices, Ethan. Now you have to live with them." As I walked out of the house, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This was just the beginning, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready for whatever came next. Returning from a week-long business trip, I felt a strange sense of anticipation and dread. The house, usually in some state of disarray thanks to Ethan's laziness, was spotless. The scent of lemon cleaner hung in the air, and everything was eerily in place. My heart pounded as I walked through the rooms, half expecting Ethan to jump out and confront me. On the dining table, a stack of papers caught my eye. Divorce papers, complete and signed by Ethan. I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. This was what I wanted, right? But the finality of it all was overwhelming. The doorbell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Ethan standing there, looking more put together than I had seen him in weeks. Behind him, Marianne stood, her face a mask of concern and anger. "We need to talk," Ethan said, pushing past me into the house. Marianne followed, her eyes scanning the room with disapproval. "Hannah, this is madness. You can't go through with this." I closed the door, my hands trembling. "It's already done, Marianne." Ethan signed the papers. Ethan turned to face me, his eyes pleading. "We can still fix this, Hannah. We can go to counseling, try to work things out." I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "No, Ethan. It's too late for that. I've made my decision." Marianne stepped forward, her voice rising. "This is all your fault, Hannah. You've driven him to this. You're tearing this family apart. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Marianne, this isn't about you. This is between Ethan and me. She scoffed, her eyes narrowing. Oh, don't be so naive. Everything you do affects this family. And don't think for a second that Richard won't take Ethan's side in this. Ethan's face paled. Mom, that's enough. But Marianne wasn't done. You think you can just walk away and keep your job at the company? Richard will see to it that you're out on the street. I felt a surge of anger. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Marianne said, her voice cold. Ethan stepped between us, his face strained. Mom, please. This isn't helping. Marianne glared at him. You need to fight for your marriage, Ethan. Don't let her ruin everything. I clenched my fists, my patience wearing thin. Ethan, if you want to save any shred of dignity, you'll leave now. Both of you. Ethan looked torn, but he nodded. Come on, Mom. Let's go. Marianne huffed but followed him out, casting one last venomous look my way. As the door closed behind them, I sank into a chair, my heart racing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next day at work, I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting back to the confrontation with Ethan and Marianne. I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone buzzed with a message from Richard. See me in my office. Now. My stomach churned as I made my way to his office. Richard's stern expression did nothing to calm my nerves. Sit down, Hannah, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I sat, trying to steady my breathing. What is this about, Richard? He leaned back, his eyes cold. I've heard about the divorce. And I have to say, I'm disappointed. I swallowed hard. I understand, but this is a personal matter. Personal? He scoffed. You're part of this family, and this affects all of us. But more importantly, it affects the company. I felt a flash of anger. With all due respect, Richard, my personal life shouldn't impact my professional capabilities. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Don't be naive, Hannah. Everything affects everything. And let me be clear. If this divorce damages the company's reputation, there will be consequences. I met his gaze, refusing to back down. Are you threatening my job? He smiled, a cold, calculating smile. I'm simply stating the facts. Keep that in mind. As I left his office, my mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Richard's veiled threat hung over me like a dark cloud. I had to be careful, but I also had to stand my ground. This was my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone control it. The stakes were higher than ever, and I knew I had to be prepared for whatever came next. The days following my confrontation with Richard were a whirlwind. I threw myself into work, determined to prove my worth despite the looming threats. But the tension was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break. One evening, as I was wrapping up a late meeting, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated but answered. Hannah, it's Marianne, came the cold voice on the other end. I sighed, bracing myself. What do you want, Marianne? We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe on 5th in an hour. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone, my stomach churning. This couldn't be good. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Marianne sat in a corner booth, her face pinched with worry. I slid into the seat across from her, my heart pounding. What's this about? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She leaned in, her eyes hard. Richard is planning to fire you, Hannah. He's just waiting for the right moment. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Why are you telling me this? Because, she said, her voice trembling, he's planning to replace you with Ethan. I stared at her, stunned. Ethan? But he's been groveling, trying to win his father's favor back, Marianne interrupted. And Richard is considering it. He thinks it will save face for the family. I felt a surge of anger. So, you're warning me out of the goodness of your heart? She looked away, her expression conflicted. No, I'm warning you because I don't want Ethan to get hurt. He can't handle the pressure. And if he fails, Richard will destroy him. I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. What do you expect me to do? Fight back, she said, her eyes fierce. Prove to Richard that you're indispensable. Make it impossible for him to replace you. I shook my head, feeling overwhelmed. This is insane. Welcome to the family, she said bitterly. You either play the game or get crushed. As I left the cafe, my mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Richard's plan to replace me with Ethan was a new low, even for him. I had to act fast, but I needed a strategy. The next day, I called an emergency meeting with my team. As we gathered in the conference room, I could feel the weight of their expectations. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I began, trying to keep my voice steady. We have a critical project coming up, and I need everyone at their best. The team nodded, their faces determined. I outlined the project, emphasizing its importance to the company's future. As I spoke, I could see their confidence growing. This was my chance to prove my worth, not just to Richard but to myself. Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly, putting in long hours and pushing ourselves to the limit. The project was a massive success, and I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. But the looming threat of Richard's plans still hung over me. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I received a call from Ethan. Hesitant, I answered. Hannah, we need to talk, he said, his voice strained. About what? I asked, my patience wearing thin. About the divorce, he replied. I want to make things right. I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and pity. Ethan, it's too late for that. Please, just hear me out, he pleaded. Meet me at the house. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I arrived, Ethan was waiting on the porch, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen him. Hannah, I know I've made mistakes, he began, his voice breaking. But I can't lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. I looked at him, feeling a surge of conflicting emotions. Ethan, this isn't just about us. Your father is planning to fire me and replace me with you. His eyes widened in shock. What? He can't do that. Oh, he can, I said bitterly. And he will, unless I prove my worth. Ethan slumped onto the porch steps, his face pale. I had no idea. Well, now you do, I said, my voice firm. So, what are you going to do about it? He looked up at me, a flicker of determination in his eyes. I'll talk to him. I'll make him see reason. I shook my head, feeling a mix of hope and skepticism. Good luck with that. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of resolve. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The stakes were higher than ever, but I was ready. It was time to take control of my life, once and for all. The days blurred together as I threw myself into work, determined to solidify my position at the company. The looming threat of Richard's plan to replace me with Ethan hung over me like a dark cloud. I knew I had to stay one step ahead, but the pressure was immense. One afternoon, as I was reviewing reports in my office, my assistant, Claire, knocked and entered, her face pale. Hannah, you need to see this, she said, handing me a folder. I opened it to find a series of emails between Richard and the board members, discussing my potential replacement. My heart sank as I read the cold, calculated words. They were planning to announce my termination at the next board meeting. I felt a surge of panic but quickly pushed it down. I couldn't afford to lose my composure now. I needed a plan. Thank you, Claire, I said, my voice steady. Please, keep this between us for now. She nodded, her eyes filled with concern. Of course, Hannah. Let me know if there's anything else I can do. As she left, I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. I had to find a way to turn this around, to prove my indispensability before the board meeting. But how? That evening, I received a call from Ethan. Hesitant, I answered. Hannah, I talked to Dad, he said, his voice strained. And? I asked, holding my breath. He wouldn't listen, Ethan admitted. He said it's too late, that the decision has already been made. I felt a wave of despair. So, that's it? They're just going to replace me. No, Ethan said, his voice firm. I'm not giving up. I have an idea, but I need your help. What is it? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Meet me at the office tonight. I'll explain everything, he said before hanging up. I arrived at the office to find Ethan waiting in the lobby, a determined look on his face. He led me to a conference room, where he had set up a laptop and projector. "We need to show the board that you're irreplaceable," he began. "And the best way to do that is to present a plan that only you can execute." I frowned, skeptical. "And what plan is that?" He pulled up a presentation on the laptop. "I've been working on a proposal for a new project. It's ambitious, but if we can pull it off, it will secure your position and prove your value to the company." I scanned the proposal, impressed by the level of detail and innovation. "This is good, Ethan. Really good. But can we pull it off in time?" He nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "We have to. It's our only chance." We spent the next several days working tirelessly on the proposal, refining every detail and preparing for the board meeting. It was a strange feeling, working so closely with Ethan after everything that had happened. But in a way, it reminded me of why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. He was capable, driven, and, when he wanted to be, remarkably insightful. The day of the board meeting arrived, and I felt a mix of nervousness and resolve. This was it, our last chance to turn things around. As we entered the boardroom, Richard's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The board members took their seats, and the room fell silent. Ethan and I presented our proposal, outlining the potential benefits and the unique skills I brought to the project. I could see the board members' interest peaking, their skepticism slowly melting away. When we finished, Richard stood up, his face a mask of controlled anger. "This is impressive," he admitted, his voice cold. "But it's not enough to change my decision." I felt a surge of panic, but Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. "Dad, if you replace Hannah, you'll lose more than just an employee. You'll lose the respect of everyone in this room. She's proven her worth time and time again. This project is just the beginning." The board members murmured among themselves, and I could see their expressions shifting. Richard's face hardened, but he knew he was losing control of the narrative. Finally, one of the senior board members spoke up. "I agree with Ethan. Hannah has demonstrated exceptional leadership and vision. We should give her the chance to see this project through." Richard's jaw clenched, but he nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Hannah, you have my support for now. But know this, one misstep and you're out." I nodded, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and determination. "Thank you. I won't let you down." As the meeting adjourned, Ethan turned to me, a small smile on his face. "We did it." I felt a surge of gratitude and hope. Yes, we did. But this is just the beginning. There's still a lot of work to be done. He nodded, his eyes filled with resolve. "I'm ready." As we walked out of the boardroom, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The stakes were higher than ever, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The air in the office was electric with tension. It had been a week since the board meeting, and the project was in full swing. Ethan and I had been working around the clock, but the pressure was relentless. Every step forward felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. One afternoon, as I was buried in spreadsheets, my phone buzzed with a message from Claire. "Richard wants to see you." Now! I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever storm was coming. Richard's office was a fortress of intimidation, with its dark wood paneling and imposing desk. He sat behind it, his expression unreadable. "Hannah," he began, his voice deceptively calm, "I've reviewed your progress on the project. It's impressive, but not enough." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, his eyes cold. "I need results, not promises. If you can't deliver, I'll have no choice but to replace you." I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my composure. "We're on track, Richard. You have my word." "Your word means nothing to me," he snapped. "I want proof." Before I could respond, the door burst open, and Marianne stormed in, her face flushed with anger. "Richard, this has gone too far." He looked at her, his expression hardening. "This is none of your concern, Marianne. It is my concern when you're tearing this family apart," she shouted, turning to me. "Hannah, You have to understand. Richard is doing this to protect the company, but he's lost sight of what's important. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Marianne's words were unexpected, and I didn't know whether to trust her. What are you saying? I'm saying, she continued, her voice trembling, that Richard is making a mistake. Ethan isn't ready to take over, and pushing you out will only hurt everyone. Richard's face darkened. Enough, Marianne. This is business, not a family matter. She glared at him, her eyes blazing. No, Richard. This is personal. You've let your ambition cloud your judgment. I stood there, caught between their warring words, feeling the weight of their expectations crushing me. This was the most significant crisis yet, and I had to navigate it carefully. Suddenly, Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face pale. Dad, Mom, stop. This isn't helping. Richard turned to him, his expression icy. What do you want, Ethan? Ethan took a deep breath, his voice steady. I want to fix this. Hannah and I have a plan, but we need your support. Richard's eyes narrowed. And why should I trust you? Because, Ethan said, his voice breaking, I believe in Hannah. She's the best person for this job, and you know it. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Richard looked between us, his face a mask of controlled fury. Fine, he said finally, his voice like steel. You have one last chance, but if you fail, it's over. With that, he turned and left, leaving us standing in stunned silence. Marian looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mix of hope and desperation. Don't let him win, Hannah, she whispered before following Richard out. Ethan and I stood there, the weight of the world on our shoulders. We have to make this work, he said, his voice trembling. I nodded, my resolve hardening. We will. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. We worked late into the night, refining every detail of the project, pushing ourselves to the limit. The pressure was immense, but failure was not an option. One evening, as we were wrapping up another long day, Ethan turned to me, his face etched with worry. Hannah, there's something you need to know. I looked at him, my heart pounding. What is it? He took a deep breath, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad's been embezzling funds from the company. I found the evidence. My mind reeled. This was the revelation that could change everything. Are you sure? He nodded, his eyes filled with fear. Yes. If this gets out, it could destroy the company. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. This was the most significant crisis yet, and it pushed me to my limit. I had to decide. Expose Richard and risk everything, or find another way to save the company and my career. As I stood there, the weight of the decision pressing down on me, I knew one thing for sure. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The stakes were higher than ever, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The revelation of Richard's embezzlement hung over me like a storm cloud. Ethan and I worked tirelessly, but the weight of the secret threatened to crush us. We knew we had to act, but the risk was immense. Exposing Richard could save the company, but it could also destroy everything we had worked for. One evening, as we were finalizing the project presentation, Ethan turned to me, his face etched with worry. Hannah, we can't keep this to ourselves. We need to tell the board. I nodded, my stomach churning. I know, but we have to be careful. If we do this wrong, it could backfire. Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes filled with determination. We'll do it right. We'll gather all the evidence and present it at the board meeting. They have to know the truth. The days leading up to the board meeting were a blur of frantic activity. We worked late into the night, compiling evidence and preparing our presentation. The pressure was immense, but failure was not an option. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. As we entered the conference room, the tension was palpable. Richard sat at the head of the table, his expression cold and unreadable. The board members took their seats, their eyes flicking between us with curiosity and suspicion. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it, our moment of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady. We have a critical issue to discuss. Over the past few weeks, we have uncovered evidence of financial misconduct within the company. The room fell silent, the board members' expressions shifting to shock and concern. Richard's face darkened, but he said nothing. Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. We have evidence that Richard has been embezzling funds from the company. We've compiled the documentation and are prepared to present it. The board members murmured among themselves, their eyes wide with disbelief. Richard stood up, his face contorted with rage. "This is absurd," he shouted. "How dare you accuse me of such a thing?" "We have the evidence," I said, my voice unwavering, "and we believe it's in the best interest of the company to address this issue immediately." Richard's eyes blazed with fury. "You think you can take me down? You're nothing without me." The room erupted into chaos, the board members shouting over each other. I felt a surge of panic, but Ethan squeezed my hand, grounding me. "Order!" one of the senior board members shouted, banging a gavel on the table. "We need to review the evidence before making any decisions." Ethan and I presented the documentation, outlining the financial discrepancies and tracing them back to Richard. The board members examined the evidence, their expressions growing more serious with each passing minute. Finally, the senior board member looked up, his face grim. "This is damning evidence. Richard, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Richard's face was a mask of controlled fury. "This is a setup. They're trying to undermine me and take control of the company." The board member shook his head. "The evidence speaks for itself. I'm afraid we have no choice but to suspend you pending a full investigation." Richard's face twisted with rage. "You can't do this. I built this company." The board member's expression was resolute. "Our decision is final. You are hereby suspended, effective immediately." Richard stormed out of the room, leaving us in stunned silence. The board members turned to us, their expressions a mix of gratitude and concern. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention," the senior board member said. "We will conduct a thorough investigation and ensure that justice is served." As the meeting adjourned, I felt a wave of relief and exhaustion. We had done it. We had exposed Richard and saved the company. But the battle was far from over. Ethan and I walked out of the conference room, the weight of the past weeks lifting off our shoulders. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. "Yes, we did," I replied, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "But there's still a lot of work to be done." As we left the office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The stakes had never been higher, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The board launched a full investigation into Richard's embezzlement, and the company was in a state of upheaval. But through it all, I felt a sense of determination and resolve. This was my chance to prove myself, and I was ready to seize it. As I stood in my office looking out over the city, I felt a sense of hope and possibility. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready to face whatever came next. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. The boardroom was tense as the final decision about Richard's fate loomed. The investigation had confirmed his embezzlement, and the board was ready to make their ruling. I stood at the back of the room, my heart pounding, knowing that this moment would define the future. Not just for the company, but for everyone involved. Richard sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of defiance. Marianne was beside him, her expression a mix of anger and sadness. Ethan stood next to me, his hand gripping mine tightly. This was it, the climax of everything we had fought for. The senior board member cleared his throat, bringing the room to silence. After thorough investigation and deliberation, the board has decided to terminate Richard Thompson from his position as CEO, effective immediately. A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Richard's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. I built this company." The board member's expression remained resolute. "Your actions have jeopardized the integrity of this company. We have no choice." Marianne's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, please." But Richard stood up, his eyes blazing. "This isn't over. You will all regret this." He stormed out of the room, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Marianne followed him, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The board members turned to me, their expressions a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "Hannah," the senior board member said, "we need strong leadership now more than ever. We would like to offer you the position of interim CEO." I felt a surge of emotions, relief, pride, and a deep sense of responsibility. "Thank you. I accept." The room erupted in applause, and Ethan hugged me tightly. "You did it, Hannah. You saved the company." I smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "We did it, Ethan. Together." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Taking on the role of CEO was daunting, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into the work, determined to steer the company towards a brighter future. Ethan and I worked closely, our relationship mending as we faced the challenges together. He had shown a side of himself I hadn't seen in years, capable, supportive, and genuinely committed to making things right. One evening, as we were wrapping up another long day, Ethan turned to me, his expression serious. "Hannah, I know things have been difficult between us, but I want to make it work. I want to be the partner you deserve." I looked at him, feeling a mix of hope and caution. "Ethan, we've been through so much. It's going to take time to rebuild trust." He nodded, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I know, but I'm willing to put in the effort." "I love you, Hannah." I felt a tear slip down my cheek. "I love you too, Ethan. Let's take it one step at a time." As we embraced, I felt a sense of closure. The past had been tumultuous, but the future was filled with possibility. Weeks turned into months, and the company began to thrive under my leadership. The project we had worked so hard on was a success, and the board's confidence in me grew. I felt a sense of empowerment and fulfillment I hadn't experienced in years. One afternoon, as I was reviewing reports in my office, Marianne walked in. She looked tired, but there was a softness in her eyes. "Hannah, I wanted to thank you," she began, her voice trembling, "for everything. You've shown incredible strength and integrity." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "Thank you, Marianne. It's been a difficult journey, but I believe we're all stronger for it." She smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Richard and I are moving away. We need to start fresh, away from all of this." I felt a pang of sympathy. "I wish you both the best." As she left, I felt a sense of peace. The conflicts that had once seemed insurmountable had been resolved, and I was ready to embrace the future. Standing at the window, looking out over the city, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and challenging, but I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and truly in control of my life. This was my moment, my new beginning, and I was ready to face whatever came next, with confidence and courage.
Indeed, among low-paying occupations, construction work is arguably one of the worst. Just go home. The last words were spat at me in a disdainful tone. I slowly got to my feet and bowed deeply since I was at a loss for how to break through the tense, freezing environment. "All right, I'll go home," I replied plainly before giving my friend Tom, who was planning the party, some cash. He shouted, "Wait." However, I grinned and walked out of the restaurant, into the now colder winter streets, without saying a word. As I headed home, I shivered. I was going somewhere the following day, looking dapper in a suit I hadn't worn in a while. I got to the main office of a big, well-known bank, a mega bank, to be exact. I used the highway to get here for a reason. I waited for half an hour after taking a number at the reception. When my number was finally called, the woman behind the counter gasped when she saw me coming. She questioned, "Why are you here?" "I'm 33 years old and go by Isaac." I married the woman I was seeing at the time, shortly after high school, and we had a daughter, Lily, at the age of 20. Like her mother, Aurelia, Lily, who turned 13 this year, has developed into a respectable young lady. She began middle school this year. In general, my work involves construction. I work in several different businesses, so it's challenging to focus on just one. However, there is no denying that it requires greater physical labor than office employment. I've never considered it to be difficult. I continue to do what I love because I enjoy it. I suppose I should tell you a little about my family. As I previously stated, I got married and had a child. But in actuality, Lily and I are the only ones living together. I'm a single father, to put it briefly. 3 years ago, Aurelia passed away from an illness. I will always remember that. Aurelia, whose name was associated with spring, was informed that she might had 6 more months to live. Cherry blossoms were Aurelia's favorite. We haven't missed a single cherry blossom viewing every year since we first started dating. The 3 of us, Lily, Aurelia, and I, were taking in the flowers in a well-known location that year as well. She abruptly mentioned how long her life would endure as everyone was enjoying Aurelia's prepared lunch as usual. Luckily, Lily didn't see our conversation because she was too occupied talking to some friends she ran into. Are you sure it wasn't just a mistake? I questioned Aurelia again after taking a deep breath. She nodded slowly. My breathing quickened as I felt as though I had been abruptly thrown into hell from the happy moment only a second before. I can very clearly recall my heart thumping so loudly that it was echoing in my ears. We'd agreed not to tell Lily just yet, so I went with Aurelia to the next doctor's appointment to find out more. The doctor said that only palliative treatment could be given because it was already too late. In the little time I have left, I want to make a lot of memories, Aurelia stated with a soft smile as I was overcome with hopelessness. Hearing those words, I almost wanted to blame her. Why would she say something so heartbreaking? Of course, I didn't actually say anything to her, but it felt as if she was preparing to leave us, and that thought alone made me sad. But rather than spending this limited time in despair, I wanted to make it a period Aurelia could look back on as meaningful. As this feeling grew stronger, we eventually told Lily, and the 3 of us spent time traveling and enjoying ourselves. Then, without reaching the season for our annual cherry blossom viewing, Aurelia passed away. Placing my hand on her peaceful face, as if she were just sleeping, I quietly let the words that welled up inside me slip out. I never thought you'd leave so soon. What am I supposed to do? Our daughter is still just a 10-year-old kid. Without you, I don't know if I can raise her on my own. The 6-month prognosis was so sudden that I couldn't wrap my head around it, constantly asking myself what I should do, but no answer ever came. Even after the funeral, the 49 days of mourning, and the burial, I couldn't move forward. During that time, Lily, though still grieving, calmly accepted the reality of losing her mother and stayed by my side. Dad, it's okay. Mom believed in you, so she became a star first. So Dad, let's keep living just the 2 of us. Lily, she must have been just as lonely and sad as I was, but seeing her try to stay strong made me realize that I had to get back on my feet. Aurelia wouldn't have wanted to see me like this. She didn't choose to get sick, and even though she never showed weakness in front of us, the nurse told me she had often cried during the painful treatments. Let's take it one step at a time. I may not be as good at cooking or housework as Mom was, but I'll do my best for both of us. I'll always be with you, Dad, so you never feel lonely. So 3 years have passed since we lost her, and Lily and I have been doing our best together. There were times when I felt like giving up or looked back with regret, especially when Aurelia's birthday or the anniversary of her death approached. But even during those tough times, I managed to get through, thanks to Lily's encouragement. These 3 years have been hard, but they were also important for deepening the bond between us. I never really believed that time could heal, but after 3 years, my body had gradually gotten used to living without her. Little by little, I found myself living as I had before Aurelia passed away. Around that time, I got invited to a group mixer. Technically, my friend Tom just asked me, Let's go out for drinks. It's been a while. But when I showed up, it turned out to be a mixer. Since Lily was away for a 2-night, 3-day club training camp, I figured it wouldn't hurt to go out. I had no intention of meeting anyone new. My heart still belonged solely to Aurelia, but Tom, worried about me after seeing how down I'd been, thought that since 3 years had passed, it might be time for me to move on, and that's why he invited me. He was genuinely worried about me, a single dad raising a teenage daughter, and thought it might be good for me to meet someone who could become a mother figure. When he apologized, saying, "Sorry for being nosy," with eyes like an abandoned puppy, I just couldn't turn him down. So I decided to participate, not to find a new partner, but just to enjoy a good meal. And then the day of the mixer arrived. The venue was a high-end French restaurant, fancier than I had expected, and I couldn't help but feel that even the outfit I prepared for the occasion seemed lacking. We were told the women would be arriving soon, so we waited for a while. Eventually, a group of professionally dressed women, looking sharp and competent, walked in wearing dazzling dresses. Not bad quality. I'm not sure if any of them are a match for me, but this lineup isn't too bad, Rachel said as she popped down onto a chair without any hesitation. My friends, watching her behavior, had strange expressions on their faces. Just as I was wondering what was going on, my phone vibrated inside my bag. That's when I found out her name and realized she wasn't originally invited. Tom, the organizer, exchanged a quick glance with the woman who seemed to be organizing on the women's side. They both stepped out for a moment and then returned. My phone vibrated again, and I checked to see a message saying Rachel had just shown up uninvited. Tom sent a message saying that, and I got the sense that Rachel wasn't particularly welcome, that she was someone with some kind of issue. Unaware of the exchange going on behind the scenes, Rachel glanced at me with a sly smile. Then she bluntly declared, "There's one person here dressed pretty poorly. Is he just here to make up the numbers? Even if that's the case, he could have at least worn something decent." Feeling mocked, I instinctively furrowed my brows, and she just shrugged her shoulders, giving me a disdainful look. When the mixer started, it began with the usual stuff. Introductions, talking about hobbies and special skills. Nothing too serious, but it was lively. What I quickly learned was that all the women were bank employees. They had all graduated from prestigious universities, ones whose names most people would recognize, and they all worked at the mega bank. The woman on the left, who was quite popular with the guys, had a gentle and easygoing aura. The one in the middle seemed a bit shy and didn't initiate conversations, but she answered politely when asked, which made her quite well liked. The problem was the woman on the right, Rachel. This is so boring. I guess guys really like those cutesy, soft-spoken girls. Huh. Personally, I think they're just putting on an act. Oh, and I'm not talking about you two. Okay. If I made you think that, I'm sorry. I just tend to say what I'm thinking, so people often misunderstand me. Even though no one had asked, she started talking and brought down the mood. She claimed not to be bad-mouthing the other two women, but it was clear that her words were filled with hostility toward them. Her blatant attitude and flimsy excuses were just exhausting to listen to. No wonder Tom, the organizer, had that strained expression when he saw Rachel. Surely, no one would want to engage with this kind of conversation. Seeing that no one responded, Rachel's cheerful expression from earlier turned stern, and she spoke in a tone as if scolding a subordinate. "What are you saying? I said something wrong. I just pointed out that guys who like manipulative, cutesy girls are questionable. Those types usually have nasty personalities anyway, so I was just trying to warn you. But now I'm the bad one." Oh, why are men always drawn to such obvious fakes? After that, Rachel stopped talking altogether. No one else dared to start a conversation with her. As time went on, she seemed to get bored. She started admiring her nails with a dreamy look, appearing completely uninterested in the mixer. 20 minutes later, Rachel, noticing something I was wearing, suddenly grinned and spoke up after a long silence. "Oh, Isaac, are you really participating in Mixer even though you're married?" Suddenly, all eyes were on me. More accurately, the women's eyes were glued to the ring shining on my left ring finger. It's a custom piece, one of a kind in the world. I had turned Aurelia's ring into a necklace, which Lily carries with her every day. The guys knew the situation, but the women didn't, and their gazes turned judgmental. That's when Tom hurriedly stepped in to explain. He told them that my wife had passed away, and that I was raising my daughter, Lily, on my own. The other women seemed to understand, and their eyes softened, mixing understanding with sympathy. But Rachel just muttered, "Oh," and turned away, as if completely uninterested now. She had drawn attention to me, scoffing as if to mock me, and now she was acting like she didn't care at all. If she bothered to ask, she should at least take responsibility and listen to the end. That sudden loss of interest in just a few words really irritated me. "Can't you be a bit more considerate with your words?" I asked. Rachel's eyes widened at my words. She probably never expected me to talk back. "What do you mean? I'm just the kind of person who always speaks her mind." "What? Are you telling me to live my life pretending and lying like those cutesy girls do, saying, 'Wow, amazing,' and still cool to everyone?" "That's not what I meant," I replied, finally reaching my limit. "Yes, I admit that wearing this ring could have caused some misunderstanding, and that's on me. But your attitude just now, don't you think it's a bit much? I'm not saying you should act like you're at work and be all polite, but it wouldn't hurt to at least practice some basic manners." Rachel's face turned bright red. It seemed she hadn't realized how condescending she had been, and being called out must have been quite embarrassing for her. "Are you seriously lecturing me? You, of all people. Just because you're lonely after your wife died, you think you can come to a Mixer. You've got no right to judge me at that." Tom quickly intervened. He kept insisting it was his fault for dragging me there and pleaded not to blame me. He hadn't invited me to find a partner, but just to help me take a break. So if anyone was to be blamed, it should be him. But Rachel didn't listen at all. Seriously though, coming to a Mixer with that attitude is just rude. Sure, maybe she had a point, but everyone has their own reasons for attending these things. Some people genuinely look for a match, while others just come along for good food and a bit of socializing. Besides, judging from the atmosphere, except for Rachel, the other two women, and my two friends seemed to be getting along quite well. So I couldn't help but feel like things were actually going fine. Rachel didn't seem like she was actually looking for a partner, and I wasn't either. In that sense, the Mixer seemed to be working out just fine. But even so, Rachel continued to assert her own sense of righteousness. "I only came because the original girl wasn't feeling well. I have no interest in guys who are beneath me, and I don't want them talking to me either. So stop trying to lecture me or call me down. It just disgusts me." Saying that, Rachel sank back into her chair, crossed her legs, and looked at me with a haughty expression. No one could say a word, and the atmosphere was getting unbearably tense. That's when the woman on the left tried to change the subject. Since it was already established that all the women were bank employees, the conversation shifted to talking about our jobs. Aside from me, the other guys were ordinary office workers, but they clearly had high social status and earned well compared to others their age. For women, marriage and pregnancy might mean temporarily putting their careers on hold. In such situations, having a partner with a stable income would provide peace of mind, allowing them to focus on childbirth and raising children. Perhaps because of that, the two women seemed to enjoy chatting with my friends. Since I wasn't interested in anyone other than my late wife, I just focused on enjoying the food and drinks while the four of them got along. After a while, my friends had pretty much exhausted the job-related topics, and the conversation hit a brief lull. Then, unexpectedly, the conversation shifted to me. When they asked what I did for work, I answered honestly. If I had to say, I guess I do construction work. The moment I said it, The mood in the room noticeably became heavier, especially Rachel, who had shown no interest in me earlier. Suddenly, she froze for some reason. She furrowed her brows deeply and glared at the food in front of her. I could pretty much guess why the atmosphere turned like this. After all, my friends next to me worked in major real estate and trading companies, so I knew I didn't quite measure up. Since the women looked uneasy, I decided to elaborate. Construction work isn't all I do. I have a middle school daughter, so I work somewhere that offers a bit of flexibility. It's just that most of my tasks happen to involve construction, so that's why I put it that way. There was a reason I deliberately used the phrase "if I had to say." My work spans many areas, and when I tried to pick just one to describe it, construction work happened to be the first that came to mind. Hearing my explanation, the women seemed to understand. There's definitely a bias some people have against manual labor jobs like construction. For example, large corporations and mega banks are highly selective, accessible only to a limited number of people. Often, academic background plays a major role in screening, leading to a biased view toward manual labor companies, which generally welcome anyone willing to work hard. I wondered if I should have kept quiet, but I figured being vague would only seem suspicious. Then the woman in the middle spoke up in a small voice. I think it's wonderful to do physical labor that helps others. She was probably doing her best to be encouraging. I didn't need the encouragement since I take pride in my job, but being told something supportive reminded me of how Aurelia used to cheer me on. It felt nice. The woman on the left also seemed to realize something and echoed a similar sentiment. After seeing their initial reactions, I knew their words were probably just polite remarks. Still, I was impressed by their ability to consider others' feelings. Just as expected from elite bankers. Meanwhile, Rachel just kept staring at me. I thought she was going to say something spiteful, but she remained silent. Feeling uneasy under her gaze, I couldn't help but ask, "You have something to say?" Rachel let out a deep sigh and then spoke. People who can only do manual labor usually aren't very bright, right? They're only stuck in those jobs because they lack education, but they act so full of themselves. It's really irritating. If you want to lecture me, at least graduate from a prestigious university that everyone's heard of first. What was she trying to say? That question was answered almost immediately after finishing her harsh, prejudiced rant. Rachel let out a sigh, and then with the corners of her mouth curling into a spiteful grin, she said something outrageous. I mean, construction work is practically one of the worst of the low-end jobs. There's no way someone like you would ever match up with us elite bankers. If you didn't come here to actually find a partner, you're just being a nuisance. Seriously, organizer, can you not invite people like him next time? It's such a buzzkill. Just go home. Her final words were thrown at me with a tone full of contempt. Objectively speaking, Rachel was undeniably attractive. Actually, all the women here were quite good-looking, and I honestly felt a bit out of place from the start. But hearing Rachel say it outright just didn't sit right with me. If I had said it as a self-deprecating joke, it would have been one thing, but coming from her, it was clearly a statement meant to look down on me. The silence that followed was even heavier than when I first mentioned working in construction. The other women, unsure of how to react, looked visibly uncomfortable. Rachel was already difficult to deal with as it was. Even the woman who organized the date on the women's side probably didn't expect Rachel to show up as a substitute. It was clear that Rachel was not well liked by those around her. Not knowing how to break the ice in the cold, tense atmosphere, I slowly stood up and bowed deeply. "All right, I'll head home," I said honestly, then handed some money to Tom, who was organizing the party. He called out, "Wait." But without saying anything, I smiled and left the restaurant, walking through the winter streets, which felt even colder now. I shivered as I made my way home. The next day, dressed sharply in a suit I hadn't worn in a long time, I was heading to a certain place. I glanced up at the branches of a nearby tree. It was still cold with no buds in sight, but in a few months, beautiful pink flowers would be blooming here. I really wanted to walk down this path with you again. Today is an important day, and I need to put in some extra effort. I'm a bit nervous, but I'll do my best. My phone's lock screen has always been a photo of Aurelia since we started dating. Taking pictures of her natural, genuine smile had almost become a hobby for me. Now that I couldn't do that anymore, it hurt. I unlocked my phone and opened the camera roll. For the longest time, it had been filled with photos of Aurelia, but after a certain point, things changed. After Lily was born, the gallery was filled with pictures of Aurelia and Lily. Whenever we traveled or enjoyed delicious food, I'd snap a few photos, but 90% of them were family pictures. Feeling encouraged by those memories, I gave a small nod and kept walking. I finally arrived at my destination, a well-known major bank, specifically the megabank's main branch. There was a reason I took the highway to get here. I took a number at the reception and waited for about 30 minutes. Since it was a Monday and the counters were crowded, I hadn't made a reservation, so I had to wait quite a bit. When my number was finally called, I approached the counter, and the woman there gasped as soon as she saw me. "Why are you here?" Rachel stared at me, completely dumbfounded, like a pigeon struck by a slingshot. Most of the customers at this megabank's main branch were either company owners, both large and small, or individuals with substantial assets. Of course, there were ordinary customers as well, but they typically used branch offices rather than the main one. Since I was using the corporate reception, Rachel seemed to instantly realize something. With a trembling voice, she spoke, "What brings you here today?" Her tone was clearly filled with a sense of fear, as if she were regretting her behavior from the previous night. Without paying any attention to Rachel's reaction, I calmly stated my business. "I'm here to close a company account." "Close the account." When she asked for more details, I gave her the company name, and the next moment, Rachel let out a shocked cry. "No way. You're the head of that company." "Yes, that's right, though I only took over about 6 months ago from the previous president, my late wife's father. So, it makes sense you wouldn't know. I usually leave the bank-related tasks to my staff, but I figured you might have at least heard that the president had changed." Rachel gave a small, hesitant nod. She was probably calculating in her head what kind of impact my company closing its account would have on the bank. The assets my company held in this mega bank amounted to roughly $400 million. When Rachel pulled up the account information on her computer, she seemed to grasp the situation, her eyes widening as if they were about to pop out. She was completely frozen at that moment. Another bank employee, who had been listening nearby, turned pale, stood up abruptly, and rushed to the back office. A short while later, the woman returned, this time with a man following behind her. He, too, looked completely pale. Isaac, I heard that our staff, Rachel, acted extremely disrespectfully toward you." The man speaking was Rachel's direct supervisor. Apparently, the bank's president, Mr. Martin, was out on business, making the supervisor the highest-ranking person present. The woman who had fetched the supervisor earlier probably didn't know what Rachel had done. However, when I mentioned closing the account worth nearly $400 million, and considering Rachel's panicked expression and the snippets of our conversation, she must have reported that Rachel had done something terrible. Rachel, visibly trembling, wore an expression of pure fear. Anyone would feel intimidated upon realizing they had been disrespectful to someone important enough to make their boss bow down. "We deeply apologize, Rachel." "Come on," urged her supervisor. Rachel hurriedly bowed her head. "I'm very sorry for being so rude yesterday." I didn't know whether her apology was sincere, but at least she didn't stubbornly cling to her pride and offered a proper apology, which was something. After pretending to think for a moment, I asked Rachel a question. "When I mentioned that I worked in construction, you seemed lost in thought, looking quite serious. After that, your attitude became even sharper. What was that all about? Rachel was at a loss for words, stumbling over fragmented sounds like and But perhaps realizing that she needed to speak up to move past the situation, she began to speak slowly and deliberately. The truth is, my father was also a single dad. He worked as a construction laborer. Rachel said that her mother had left because she couldn't stand her husband's low income. For some reason, Rachel was left behind, and from then on, it became a single-parent household. Apparently, even though her father's income wasn't so low that they couldn't make ends meet, his reckless spending habits and debt had been the real problem. With a sigh, Rachel continued to talk about her father's past. He was terrible with money and got buried in debt. My mom worked hard to support the family, but I guess she eventually hit her limit. One day, she just disappeared. From that point on, we had to survive solely on my dad's wages while paying off his debts. It was hell. They managed to secure food, clothing, and shelter, but Rachel couldn't have the kind of childhood where she got new clothes or went out with friends. To save off hunger, she would chew on sour seaweed snacks even after the flavor was gone. Growing up like that, she made up her mind to never become like her father. At the same time, she began to look down on people working in construction-related jobs. This was purely her own prejudice, but it was also rooted in Rachel's painful experiences from her past. So while I couldn't completely dismiss it, I still felt it was wrong for her to direct her resentment toward me, who had nothing to do with it. You saw your father in me because I'm also a single dad raising a daughter, but you don't need to worry. It's true that I've been involved in construction and related work to prepare for taking over the company. However, I am now leading the company as its president. I earn a stable income and make sure to allocate enough budget for the employees' welfare. Hearing this, Rachel lowered her gaze and fell silent. After a few seconds of silence, she spoke up again, her voice filled with remorse. You're right. I'm sorry. My father, whom I've cut ties with recently, contacted me asking for money. He said that since he'd let me attend a private high school, I should pay him back. But I only got into that school through recommendations and a scholarship. I guess I took out my frustration on you. I'm sorry. Rachel's supervisor, having listened to the whole story, declared that Rachel would face disciplinary action since I was an important client. Making me feel uncomfortable couldn't go unpunished. However, I shook my head. Punishing her won't solve the root of the problem. Besides, she explained her situation and sincerely apologized. I believe that last apology came from her heart. Rachel, what do you really want to do? Rachel fell silent, deep in thought, before softly whispering, I want to change, not just myself, but my father too. I think he's still struggling even now. Despite everything, he was a kind man. His dependence on alcohol has made things worse, but cutting ties with him without helping might have been part of the problem. Seeing Rachel speak with a determined look in her eyes, I nodded. Then with that commitment, let's put yesterday's incident and today's account closure behind us. Do your best, Rachel. Rachel nodded in agreement, and her supervisor and the other bank staff breathed a collective sigh of relief. After that, I returned to my usual routine. Lily came home from her training camp exhausted, immediately raiding the fridge for ice cream. Yay, my favorite ice cream. She happily munched on a chocolate-covered ice cream bar, her face beaming with satisfaction. Seeing her like that reminded me so much of Aurelia. Aurelia had also loved chocolate, always choosing it for dessert wherever we went. Looking at Lily, it was like a mirror image of Aurelia. I knew I couldn't consider a remarriage. I made up my mind not to attend any more mixers and to continue spending peaceful days with just Lily. But there was one thing that kept lingering in my mind. It was about Rachel and her father. Since that day, I hadn't been back to the bank, so I had no idea what had happened to them. Being a single dad raising a daughter, I could understand some of the struggles and hardships her father might have faced. I could understand, to some extent, the part about turning to alcohol as an escape. However, I decided that as an outsider, it wasn't my place to meddle in Rachel and her father's issues, so I chose not to ask any further. A few months passed, and it was late March. The cherry blossom blooming announcement had already been made, and the trees were in full bloom. Many people were walking around, gazing up at the flowers. "They're so beautiful this year, too, Dad. I can't wait to eat that lunch." "Hold on now. Let's not rush. Let's enjoy the view of the cherry blossom path a bit more first." As usual, Lily and I had come to see the cherry blossoms together. As we walked through the bustling tourist spot, something caught my eye, someone who stood out to me. It wasn't that they were particularly noticeable to others, but to me they were. I saw Rachel walking with an elderly man with gray hair, who was sitting in a wheelchair. Though I couldn't hear their conversation, the atmosphere around them was calm, and Rachel's expression seemed softer and more relaxed. "I'm sure good things will happen for you too." Gently brushing a cherry blossom petal off Lily's head, I murmured to their retreating backs. The training day finally arrived. The training was conducted in a rented conference room with top-notch audiovisual gear because the office conference room was inadequately furnished. Due to the rather early start time of the session, everyone was expected to go straight from their homes to the training site and then return to the office. I got to the training site early and waited for the other staff members to arrive. This is odd. I had told everyone that the training would begin at 9:30, but by 9:25, nobody had shown up. Michael, the trainer, was already getting the movies and session materials ready when he arrived 30 minutes early. Is it possible that nobody will arrive 5 minutes prior to the start time? Although someone might come very near, it seemed too coincidental that the entire department showed up at the last minute. Nevertheless, I chose to hold off until 9:30, hoping it was really a strange coincidence. The time was 9:31. It was past the commencement time. This is strange. Is it possible that everyone mistook the time and date? As he said, I double-checked that I had communicated the correct date and time multiple times. Michael appeared worried. However, I became anxious, questioning whether I had actually made a mistake. The right information was displayed in the shared conversation, though, and several staff members even responded. Got it. Not a single person could have misinterpreted the date. I said, "I'm so sorry," to Michael. My phone rang at that very moment. I noticed it was Kevin phoning when I looked at the screen. I said to Michael, "I apologize, but this is Kevin," and then I took the phone. "This is John, Kevin. Where are you at the moment?" I questioned him nervously. "Where else? I'm in the workplace." I became more depressed and anxious after hearing this. "The training day is today. Michael's waiting. Will you be able to arrive soon? Furthermore, nobody else has arrived." "Why would I go?" Kevin responded loudly, laughing. "Additionally, there's no point in waiting for anyone else because they won't arrive either. Would you mind attending the training alone?" Unable to understand his meaning, I answered, "What do you mean?" I let everyone know the accurate date. "You are welcome to look at the chat for yourself." "Yeah, I know," Kevin answered, laughing once again. However, I informed the executives that it was your error. So don't worry, they'll blame you for everything. I am eagerly anticipating it. I became enraged and retorted, "Why would you do such a thing? Although I'm accustomed to your abuse, Michael is involved this time. You're giving him difficulty." Kevin's voice became derisive. "Michael? Who gives a damn about an unknown elderly man?" Though not particularly valuable, the CEO's lectures are at least marginally superior. This training, to be honest, is useless. Isn't it preferable to remain at the workplace and complete your real work? I was surprised. He was constantly so obedient to the superiors. but now he was disparaging even the CEO. Kevin continued, I ordered everyone in our department not to attend this training. And hey, I even coordinated the dates so everything would go smoothly. You should thank me for my generosity. Kevin let out a loud laugh, sounding just like an evil overlord from a children's cartoon as he shouted those words. I was beyond angry and deeply disappointed to have crossed paths with such a petty boss. Why, Executive Director, did you hand someone like him such power? Just then, Michael, who had been watching me with concern, said, I see. So that's what's happening. And from there, events unfolded in ways I could never have predicted. My name is John Williams. I'm a 34-year-old office worker. I work for a mid-sized IT company called R Technology. Our CEO is a woman named Lauren Carter. I didn't attend college due to my financial circumstances, so I joined this company straight out of high school. 15 years have passed since then. Recently, my biggest concern has been the change in my direct manager. My previous boss, Robert, had to leave the company due to health issues and return to his hometown. The executive director, James, brought in an acquaintance with managerial experience at another IT company, Kevin Davis, who became our new department head last month. Kevin is 35, close to your age, and a polite guy. I'm sure you'll get along well, James told me before I met Kevin. I was hopeful. Robert, who was twice my age, had treated me like a son. But the idea of working with a manager close to my age felt refreshing. However, my expectations crumbled the moment I first met Kevin. It happened on his first day at work. Nice to meet you. My name is Kevin, and I've been assigned as the new department head. I may cause some inconvenience as I get settled, but I look forward to working with you. Kevin greeted us with a formal introduction. At first, when James introduced him in our presence, Kevin seemed completely ordinary. But as soon as James returned to another floor and left the room, Kevin's demeanor completely changed. Listen up, all of you. Don't think you can look down on me just because I'm young. I'm going to run a tight ship here. Slack off, and you're out, fired on the spot. The sudden shift in Kevin's personality froze the entire room. I had been hopeful when James said, he's close to your age and seems like a polite guy. But Kevin's proximity in age only seemed to amplify his hostility, and I became his target from the very first day. You there. I don't know how long you've been at this company, but you seem like the least useful person here. What college did you graduate from? Suddenly being singled out, I panicked and stammered. Well, I didn't go to college. Hearing my awkward response, Kevin burst into loud laughter and said seriously, You didn't go to college? High school graduate? That's unbelievable. To be insulted like this upon our first meeting made me seriously question his character. And knowing I would have to face this person every day from now on made my heart sink. From that day on, the power dynamics within our department began to shift. People started dividing into two groups. Those who wanted to avoid Kevin's overbearing personality and stayed out of his way, and those who tried to win his favor to make their lives easier. The avoidance group wasn't harassed outright, but they weren't treated well either, leading to a weaker standing within the company. On the other hand, the favor-seeking group enjoyed preferential treatment, better work, assignments, and more decision-making authority. When Robert was the department head, he evaluated employees based on their performance fairly, but Kevin evaluated employees based on his personal feelings, which raised serious doubts in my mind. Among the avoidance group, some people managed to keep their heads down and get through each day, but others became mentally exhausted and started taking frequent absences. It was disheartening to see people who had been lively and motivated during Robert's time now struggling. I didn't belong to either faction, and I was constantly thinking about how to create a better work environment for everyone. Eventually, I realized that the only way to address this issue was to report it to higher management. So about a month after Kevin's arrival, I decided to speak with James. James, I need to talk to you. Our department is facing some serious issues. What's going on, John? What's the problem? I explained to James how our team was becoming divided and how Kevin wasn't evaluating employees fairly. Kevin becomes very overbearing when supervisors aren't around. While strictness can be necessary for work, the way he plays favorites among employees and treats others unfairly is a major issue. Back when Robert was here, evaluations were based on the quality of our work, but James' response was disheartening. Well, I understand what you're saying, John, but Kevin is still new to his role. He's probably trying different methods to find what works. You should just focus on doing your best under his leadership. Speaking poorly of your boss isn't the right approach. Try to get along with him. I felt deeply disappointed. It wasn't about badmouthing Kevin. It was about addressing a serious problem. If we turned a blind eye to wrongdoing, it would only embolden such behavior. But James likely felt obligated to defend Kevin, given that he had personally handpicked him. I understand. I'm sorry for bringing it up, I said, ending the conversation and returning to my work. A few days later, something unexpected happened. The CEO of Future Vision Incorporated, Joshua, is here. Who is in charge of him? An employee who received the call from the receptionist told our department. So, Future Vision was a client I'd been handling for years, and I had scheduled a meeting with Joshua to discuss contract renewals. I'm the person in charge. I'll head to the conference room now, I said as I stood up. But Kevin immediately raised his voice and said, John, don't go. You're no longer in charge. From today, Tony will be handling Future Vision. What? I couldn't believe my ears. I had been responsible for this client for years and had scheduled this meeting with Joshua, yet Kevin was reassigning the account on the spot. But Joshua is already here. We agreed to meet at 2 p.m. Kevin shot back, Don't talk back to me. You're such an arrogant, useless employee. Typical for someone with only a high school education. Shut up and stay out of it. Kevin then turned to Tony, a college-educated employee in the favor-seeking group, and ordered, Tony, you're in charge of Future Vision from now on. Head to the conference room immediately and close the deal. He is one of the employees who aligns himself with Kevin to gain his favor. Tony, surprised by the sudden directive, hesitated and said, Me? Really? Okay, I'll do my best. He left the room reluctantly, heading toward the conference room. Why are you suddenly reassigning this account? If you're going to make changes, there needs to be a proper handover, I argued to Kevin. And he said back, It's your defiance and holier-than-thou attitude that irritates me. Keep pushing back, and I'll make sure you're fired. What he's saying is ridiculously childish. A department head, someone responsible for leading their colleagues, should never say such things, I thought. But Kevin went on to say something even more absurd. I heard all about it. You went to James to badmouth me, didn't you? Tony's the one who leaked that information. So as a token of my gratitude, I've decided to assign him the Future Vision account. And as your penalty, I'm taking you off the account. How does that feel? If you keep going against me, you'll find yourself completely isolated in this company, sitting by the window with no work to do until you're finally fired. Kevin laughed as if he was thoroughly enjoying himself. He's insane. It was a mistake to make him the department head. I was certain of it. But knowing that talking to James about the reality of this situation had led to this result, I felt utterly lost. Kevin's dislike for me was now absolute, and from that point on, he systematically removed me from my responsibilities, leaving me with almost no real work. He even took to ridiculing me in a mocking tone, saying things like, Hey John, go make some coffee. And if it tastes bad, do it again. Coffee and photocopying are the only things you're good for, so at least try to get those right. Biting my lip in frustration, I had no choice but to prepare coffee for the staff. Man, you really have it rough, ha. Getting stuck making coffee despite how long you've been here. If it were me, I'd just quit, a younger colleague said, mocking me. And he was not the only one. There were other employees of Kevin's loyal group who made fun of me along with Kevin. I realized that human society, which seems peaceful and stable at times, can easily descend into chaos, with some people attacking others when the balance is disturbed. But there was one task I still had left, besides making coffee and photocopying. Our company holds training sessions twice a year, bringing in external instructors to teach the employees. This tradition started long before I joined the company, and while I don't know exactly who oversees it, I had been assigned the role of communicating the training schedule to my department's employees a few years ago. Since the sessions are held department by department, I needed to coordinate the best dates for our team and report them to upper management. To do this, I sent out a survey in our department's shared chat, asking employees to submit their preferred dates by the end of the month. Looks like the deadline's approaching. Returning to my desk, I opened my computer to check the responses. This year, everyone chose the same date. Usually, preferences were all over the place, requiring me to go around and adjust schedules individually, a time-consuming process. But this time, it seemed like a stroke of luck, and I felt grateful for the rare coincidence. I promptly informed upper management of the finalized date and shared the information in the department's group chat. Since some people inevitably missed messages, I also announced the date during the morning meeting and put up posters to ensure no one would overlook it. This responsibility had originally been handled by our previous department head, Robert, but it had become my job over time. When I informed Kevin of the training and my role as the schedule coordinator, he showed no signs of disapproval. So this kind of training happens every year. Sounds fine to me. You're in charge of coordinating the schedule, so take care of it, he said with rare approval. With everything in place, I prepared for the training day as usual, confident in my work. Hey John, who's the instructor for this training session? A few days before the training, Kevin asked me this question. I shared the information I'd received from upper management. His name is Michael Ashton. He's an expert in the IT industry in his late 50s. Kevin's expression darkened, and he muttered, as expert. I'm an expert in the IT industry too. Unsure how to respond, I said, well, I've heard he's somewhat of a celebrity in the field. I shared additional information I'd received. Is that so? Kevin said dismissively, ending the conversation. Finally, the day of the training arrived. Because our office conference room lacked the necessary equipment, the training was held in a rented conference room equipped with high-quality audio-visual systems. Since the session started relatively early in the morning, everyone was instructed to go directly to the training venue from home and return to the office afterward. I'd arrived at the training venue early and waited for the other employees to arrive. This is strange. Even though I had informed everyone that the session started at 9:30, not a single person had shown up by 9:25. The instructor, Michael, had arrived 30 minutes early and was preparing the materials and videos for the session. Could it really happen that no one shows up 5 minutes before the start? While it was possible for someone to cut it close, for the entire department to do so seemed far too coincidental. Still, I waited, hoping against hope. Until 9:30. The clock struck 9:31. The start time had passed. That's strange. Could it be that everyone got the date and time wrong? Michael, the instructor, said to me with a worried expression. I double-checked to ensure I had communicated the correct date and time multiple times. But I started to panic, wondering if I had somehow made a mistake. However, the shared chat, confirmed that I had relayed the correct information, and several employees had even replied with understood. It would be one thing if 1 or 2 people got the date wrong, but for everyone to make the same mistake was highly unlikely. I'm terribly sorry. I apologized to Michael. Just then, my phone started ringing. I quickly glanced at the screen and saw that it was Kevin calling. I turned to Michael and said, "Excuse me, it seems to be a call from Kevin," and then answered the phone. "Kevin, this is John. Where are you right now?" I asked him urgently. Kevin responded, "Where else would I be? I'm at the office, of course." Hearing this, I panicked even more and said, "Today is the training day. The instructor has been waiting. Can you come right away? And none of the other employees have shown up either." Kevin laughed loudly and replied, "Why would I go? And the others? They won't show up either, no matter how long you wait. Why don't you just enjoy the training all by yourself?" I couldn't understand what was going on and replied, "What do you mean?" I'm certain I told everyone the correct date and time. "You can check the chat messages to see for yourself, Kevin." And then he said, "Yeah, I know. But don't worry. I'll report to upper management that it was your failure to communicate. I'm really looking forward to seeing you get chewed out for this." Anger welled up inside me, and I retorted, "Why would you do something like this? I'm used to you harassing me because you don't like me, but this time, it's causing trouble for Michael, our instructor. It's not fair." "Damn," Kevin responded. "Michael? Why would anyone care about some old guy no one knows? A lecture from the CEO would still be better than this nonsense, though honestly, our CEO's talks are pretty dull too. Either way, it's all pointless. Instead of wasting time on some lame training, you should be at the office doing real work." I was stunned. Kevin, who always acted submissive around executives, was now belittling even the CEO in this way. Kevin continued, "I told everyone in our department not to attend the training. Since no one was going to show up anyway, I at least made sure everyone submitted the same preferred date to make the scheduling process easier. You should thank me for my kindness." Kevin's laughter was like that of a cartoon villain from a children's show, loud and exaggerated. I felt a deep sense of disappointment, not just anger, about having crossed paths with such a ridiculous boss. "James, why on earth did you hire someone like him?" I thought to myself. At that moment, Michael, who had been standing nearby with a concerned expression, spoke up. "I see, so that's what's been going on." Surprised, I instinctively said, "What?" It quickly dawned on me that Kevin's loud voice and Michael's proximity had allowed him to overhear our entire conversation. "I'm sorry, Michael. I never expected things to turn out like this. This is also my oversight. I deeply apologize." When I apologized, Michael replied, "No, you don't need to apologize. None of this is your fault." He continued, "You've been through a lot, haven't you? I'll handle this situation myself. Don't worry about today. I'll be in touch later." He then packed up the projector and materials he had prepared and left. As I walked back from the rental conference room to my company, my mind was flooded with thoughts. Michael had said he would handle the matter. Could that mean I might face a demotion, a pay cut, or even the worst-case scenario, being fired? On the other hand, Michael had overheard Kevin's words. Would Kevin be held accountable? But as an external instructor, Michael might only report that his time was wasted due to our company's mistakes, which could still result in me being blamed. With these thoughts swirling in my mind, I arrived at the office. Entering the building, I felt a heavy weight as I headed toward the 3rd floor, where my department was located. To delay my arrival, I told myself it's for exercise and opted to take the stairs instead of the elevator. Still feeling dejected, I entered my department's office. What greeted me was an unexpected scene. Standing there was our CEO, Lauren Carter, arms crossed and glaring angrily at Kevin. In front of her, Kevin stood with his shoulders slumped, looking utterly defeated. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it." Kevin was unusually meek as he apologized. "Sorry isn't going to cut it. James brought you here claiming you were a talented hire, but I was foolish to believe him. Giving someone as utterly incompetent as you a managerial position and paying you a salary, what a waste." Lauren raised her voice in frustration before letting out a deep sigh. The other employees could only stand by, nervously watching the scene unfold. Soon after, Lauren noticed me standing nearby and turned her attention toward me. "John, you've been through a lot, haven't you? I'm so sorry for all the trouble you've had to endure." Lauren offered words of sympathy. I could only respond, "Yes," still struggling to grasp the situation. My husband was beyond angry. He was dumbfounded. He told me he's encountered many professionals in his long career, but rarely anyone this abysmal. He couldn't help but laugh. Bitterly, Lauren said this as if to herself. "Husband." I was still completely lost. "Oh, I didn't explain properly, did I? The instructor you met earlier, Michael, is my husband. Before I founded this company, he ran several businesses, and he helped me tremendously when I was starting out. That's why I asked him to lead this training, to share his knowledge and experience with our employees. Oh, and his full name is Michael Ashton, but in the industry, he's known as Mark Brown. He uses a different name when writing," Lauren explained. "Wait, was that Mark Brown? I've read his books. He's published so many bestsellers." I exclaimed, overwhelmed with excitement. "I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. Michael and I kept our surnames, so there was no way you could have known. But you see, he overheard your conversation with Kevin at the training venue and told me everything. I'm truly glad I found out. If I hadn't, this dangerous employee named Kevin would have been left unchecked, causing even bigger problems." Michael told me Kevin said on the phone, "The CEO's talks are pointless." Not only did he insult Michael, but he also had the audacity to badmouth me. "How could you badmouth the CEO like that? You're so two-faced, Kevin. I can't trust you at all. You're fired, effective immediately." With those words, Lauren decisively terminated Kevin's employment. Kevin slumped in defeat. But then, seemingly out of spite, he turned to me and suddenly started shouting, "This is all your fault, John. You set me up, didn't you? I'll never forgive you." At that moment, a figure appeared at the doorway. "The one who won't forgive you is me. I won't forgive you, Kevin." It was James, who spoke with a stern tone. "James, what did you just say?" Kevin stammered. James responded, "I'll say it as many times as necessary. I won't forgive you, Kevin. I trusted you enough to bring you in as a manager, and this is how you repay me. Betrayal like this is unacceptable. As atonement for the trouble you've caused the employees, I intend to resign as well." Then James turned to me and said, "John, I owe you the deepest apology. I believe I caused you the most trouble. When you came to me before to report Kevin's behavior, I dismissed you, without addressing the issue. That was my mistake. As a leader, my duty should have been to investigate the claims you brought to me. I failed as a manager." James apologized to me. "James, please don't apologize," I replied, having no intention of blaming him. Seeing this exchange, Lauren said, "James, we'll discuss your position later. I understand Kevin was deceitful and ingratiating toward his superiors, so I don't blame you entirely for not seeing through him. However, your response to John's report wasn't adequate, so I'll have to issue a formal reprimand. That said, resigning is unnecessary." "Thank you, Lauren. I truly appreciate your understanding. And I'm very sorry," James lowered his head, his voice subdued. All right, everyone. Let's get back to work. Kevin will be handling his resignation paperwork, so, James, please oversee that. Oh, and one more thing. The training we missed today will be rescheduled, so make sure you all attend. John, I'll leave the arrangements to you. Again, thanks. Lauren gave her instructions energetically and left the room. Kevin, his shoulders slumped, was led to another room by James. That was the last time I ever saw him. About 3 months later, time had moved on. The rescheduled training was held successfully, with no absentees, and everyone found it highly beneficial. My hard work was acknowledged by the CEO, and I received a pay raise. Lauren even told me directly that she hoped I would take on the role of department manager in the near future. The employees who had previously aligned themselves with Kevin to gain his favor now acted deferential and respectful toward me. However, I had no intention of favoring anyone who tried to curry favor with me. While it saddened me that some colleagues had developed such attitudes, I was determined to follow in Robert's footsteps and evaluate everyone's work fairly. I believed that by fostering fairness, the workplace atmosphere would improve as a whole. I wasn't sure how much I could change on my own, but I was determined to try. James chose not to resign and remained a reliable executive who consistently showed care for us employees. I hope to work alongside him to create an excellent workplace environment. By the way, I heard through the grapevine that Kevin returned to his family's home in the countryside. Apparently, he's working as a regular employee there, or so they say. He's still young, so I hope he turns over a new leaf and does his best. One day, James called me into his office. John, do you have a moment? When I arrived, he shared some unexpected news. Thanks to a recommendation from Joshua, the president of Future Vision, we might land a contract with an even bigger client. The company is Site A, and Joshua specifically requested that you handle the account. Can I count on you? Really? I'm honored. Thank you so much. Future Vision was the client I'd been abruptly removed from under Kevin's orders, but Joshua still remembered me. According to James, Joshua told him I was far more reliable than my replacement and praised my competence. I'm considering giving the Future Vision account back to you, but since you're set to become a manager, I might need to let Tony learn and grow more in that role. No, I'm still learning myself. How about I accompany Tony to the next meeting with Joshua to support him? That's a great idea. Thanks, John. I reflected deeply and thought. When you work hard and stay sincere, there are always people who notice and appreciate it. In the workplace, there will always be challenges and difficult people, but I resolved to remain steadfast and genuine in my actions. I knew that eventually, that effort would come back to benefit me. With that thought, I looked at the business card for Topside Incorporated, picked up the phone, and dialed the number. Hello, I'm John from RET Technology. I was referred by the CEO of Future Vision, Joshua, and I'm calling to speak with your president, Mr. Mark Smith. Is he available? I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation for the new opportunities that lay ahead. An elderly hag has no seat. Return home. My mother and I went to the corporate party. Before Catherine Simpson, a nasty employee, told my mother this, we were enjoying ourselves. Yolanda, Catherine's mother, further exacerbated the situation by acting haughtily. I was furious, but my mother was the first to speak. Catherine, could you please call your branch's top official? The Simpsons' reputation was immediately destroyed by this single sentence. Diana Krall is my name. I work for the corporation and I am 48 years old. My mother, Helen, is vivacious and has a flower store. My father went away 11 years ago. She wasn't operating a flower business from the start, of course. She was once a very involved employee of the corporation. The corporation wanted her to continue in some position even after she retired, but she decided to take a full retirement. She stated, "I want to take it easy now because it's not good for an old woman to stay on site forever." Because she loved working with flowers, she decided to create a flower business. My mother has always had a deep affection for flowers, and she said that they helped her get through difficult times when she worked. The wonderful thing about flowers is that they don't speak. They are lovely, and they don't say things that aren't required. Thus, simply gazing at them soothes my thoughts. She kept flowers on her desk at work and frequently used them to adorn the house. Since she opened her flower shop, my mother seems to love every day. On my days off, I occasionally assist at the shop as well. I'm thankful that it naturally provides us with mother-daughter connection time. It may sound like a happy narrative based just on this, however, I'm having problems with someone at work. Catherine Simpson is her name. Catherine is a 24-year-old young employee who works in the same branch and department as me. It is expected of young people to infuse the company with vitality, yet Catherine is the complete opposite. She disturbs the workplace and causes problems for a variety of people. For instance, we met with a client on business during her first year. We decided to meet at the client's office because I had another assignment. However, even though the meeting was scheduled to begin, Catherine failed to appear. I apologized to the client and began the meeting by myself since I was unable to get through to her on her work phone. The pleasant conclusion was about to be reached when Catherine arrived with a lighthearted demeanor. "Excuse me, I suppose I'm running late." She began licking the ice cream cone she was holding. The male employee of the customer looked, of course, incredulous. "Why do you think you're acting that way and arriving late?" He was furious, but Catherine didn't care. "What's making you so angry?" "I was in line to purchase the new smartphone because I wanted it. That explains my tardiness." Naturally, the client rejected such an explanation. "Do you think we're inferior?" He became even more irate. Anyone would typically apologize at this time, but Catherine is not like that. "Wow, you're really mad. Oh, are you interested in this ice cream? I got it from a buzzing store. Absolutely not giving this to you. Slurp, slurp." She provoked the client even more, making him angrier. "I'm terribly sorry. Catherine, go home now," I instructed, pushing the grumbling Catherine out. "I came here to work, and now it's just a trip." Oh. After that, I apologized to the client repeatedly and somehow managed to close the deal. Thinking about it now still makes me sigh. I never want to go through that again. But Catherine never considers others' feelings. She has caused similar troubles multiple times, and there's now a rule that she can't interact with clients. Someone like her should be fired, but Catherine has a powerful ally who protects her from any consequences. That ally is her mother, Yolanda. Yolanda is a department head at the main office and has made significant contributions since she joined, giving her strong influence within the company. Naturally, no one in our branch can oppose her, not even our branch manager, George Miller. Catherine takes advantage of this and causes a fuss every time something happens. I'll tell my mom. Also, it's a problem that Yolanda frequently visits the company under the pretext of inspections. Catherine mainly hinders others, so her work performance is extremely poor. I'd want her parent and boss, Yolanda, to scold her properly. But for some reason, only the surrounding employees get reprimanded. Catherine was a very hard-working student preparing for college exams. If she's not performing, well, it's definitely because of her environment. Yolanda says this loudly. But Catherine didn't study much as a child and failed her college entrance exams. Moreover, during her gap year, She hardly studied at all and was unemployed until she was 22. Yolanda used her influence to get Catherine a job through connections, and now she's become a troublemaker. How do I know all this even though I'm not part of their family? Because Catherine told me herself. At the new employee welcome party, Catherine described herself as a hard worker. I've been studying for an hour a day since I was a kid. Well, sometimes you need breaks, so I took 4 days off a week. Catherine said this with confidence, but anyone could meet that 1 hour study time by just doing their homework. An employee who attended a competitive school said it was normal to study for 8 hours a day, on weekends during exam season. Catherine's study habits hardly qualify as hard work. I failed my college entrance exams in my senior year, but I realized that life isn't just about studying. So I tried various things to broaden my horizons. This statement itself is fine, but Catherine enrolled in a voice acting school and quit after 2 months. Then she enrolled in a programming school and dropped out after a month, repeating this pattern of giving up quickly. As a result, time just passed without her gaining any skills. But the trouble part is that Catherine feels she accomplished something. Shortly after joining the company, she said this while fiddling with a computer. I went to a computer school, so difficult tasks are a piece of cake. However, what Catherine was doing was merely calculating totals and averages on a spreadsheet. It's something all employees can do, and nothing to boast about. She feels like she has done a huge job just by creating a simple document. Mission accomplished. Therefore, even if I want to assign her the next task, she runs out of energy and doesn't do anything. Currently, she can only manage to create 3 documents a day, making her work performance the worst by far. She's truly a deadweight employee. But her outrageous behavior doesn't stop there. One day, while I was helping my mother at her flower shop on my day off, Catherine and Yolanda came in together. I had a bad feeling, but I greeted them with a smile. Welcome, I said. However, Catherine immediately scowled upon seeing me. You, why are you here? She snapped. I came to find flowers for my house, but now I'm in a terrible mood. Oh, you're the employee ruining everything. Get out. Even Yolanda started hurling insults at me. I was exasperated but decided to treat them courteously as valuable customers. This is my mother's shop, and I help out on my days off, I explained. But then, Catherine kicked over a bucket of flowers. Yolanda followed suit by smashing a nearby potted plant onto the floor. That plant wasn't for sale, but was a flower my mother had nurtured with care. Why would you do such a thing? I hurriedly stood the bucket upright and rushed the potted plant, but the floor was soaked and the pot couldn't be restored. Catherine then flashed a malicious grin. A troublesome store like this should just go out of business. I only helped move things in that direction. That's right. I felt Catherine's intent, so I got a bit rough. Afterward, the troublesome duo smugly exchanged remarks about how great mother-daughter power is, but it was a nightmare for us. Moreover, my mother, who had just returned from a flower delivery, saw the state of the shop and was wide-eyed. Oh, we helped you destroy your store, old hag. Let's go, Mom, Catherine said. Yes, Catherine. I don't want flowers from such a shabby store anyway. Let's go somewhere else. Bye, old hag, Yolanda added. The two left, spewing hateful remarks, leaving my mother and me to clean up the mess. When I explained what had happened, she looked very sad. Of course, she was devastated as the flowers she cherished were damaged. Those people are really something. If they do anything again, we need to come up with a plan, my mother said. I agreed with her, and we decided to install security cameras. However, we unexpectedly had to confront the son again. One day, I attended a company party held at the headquarters. This party gathers not only headquarters employees, but also those from all branches, with over 1,000 attendees. It's quite a grand event. While only employees can attend, I was allowed to bring my mother. We arrived 2 hours before the scheduled start time, waited for preparations to finish, and then the party began. The company president had generously prepared a buffet with delicious food, and we could eat as much as we wanted. There's nothing more grateful than this. Though my mother is older, she still has a hearty appetite and loves meat. "This is so good," she said, enjoying the roast beef. Seeing her happy face made me very pleased. However, our peaceful mother-daughter time was interrupted by none other than the Simpsons. "Wow, look at those poor folks getting excited over cheap meat," Catherine mocked. "Don't become like that." Such cruel words ruined our mood. I wished they would leave soon, but they didn't. "Isn't this party only for employees? Why are you here?" Yolanda questioned. Catherine added, "There's no place for an old hag here. Go home." Then she swiftly grabbed my mother's plate and smashed it on the floor. "I threw away your cheap meat for you." "Oh, but I guess it's a feast for poor people." "Oh, Catherine, you've grown into such a kind girl," Yolanda mocked. While the staff hurried to clean up, the Simpsons laughed mockingly. That was the last straw for me. Whether she's my boss or her daughter, I'm going to get truly angry, and I'll make her apologize to my mother. I was about to unleash my anger when my mother spoke first. "Catherine, can you call the highest-ranking person in your branch?" This one sentence began the downfall of the Simpsons. Of course, Catherine wasn't going to listen obediently. Calling for the boss, "You're just a complainer. It's embarrassing for an old hag to get all worked up like this," she scoffed. "You're absolutely right. You're so young, yet you understand things so well," Yolanda chimed in, making Catherine think she was right. "Look, complainers should just go home," Catherine added, getting even more brazen. But my mother didn't back down. "Stop joking around and call the branch manager," she said in a commanding tone, not backing down an inch. Her whole demeanor was intimidating, making it clear she wouldn't tolerate any disrespect. Even the usually audacious Catherine seemed taken aback. "Why are you so mad?" "Fine, I'll call him for you," she said. I could easily handle the branch manager anyway. Yolanda, being even more brazen than Catherine, went to call the branch manager. 5 minutes later, the branch manager, George Miller, appeared. He was sweating nervously, visibly trembling at the thought of his employee causing trouble. "I heard that Catherine here did something disrespectful," George said. Actually, when my mother explained the situation, George's face turned pale, and he repeatedly apologized. "I'm deeply sorry. Such rudeness towards you, Helen, is absolutely inexcusable." "What? Why are you apologizing so much? As the branch manager, you should be defending me," Catherine yelled at him. "It's unheard of for a mere employee to act so arrogantly toward the boss." Catherine's attitude was skewed, likely because Yolanda always backed her up. But this situation was bizarre. My mother seemed to notice the oddity too and furrowed her brow. "I've heard some things from my daughter, but Catherine, you're worse than I thought." "Huh. Don't butt in, old hag. Should I smash that glass too?" Catherine got even more aggressive. Meanwhile, George's face grew increasingly pale. "Enough. Helen is one of the founding contributors to our branch." "Huh. What's that supposed to mean?" Catherine looked puzzled, as if she couldn't follow the conversation. "How could an old hag like her establish a company?" Catherine mocked. "Stop being so disrespectful." George interrupted. He began to explain. "Our company started as a small business in a single room. When Helen joined, our performance skyrocketed. She worked tirelessly as the first branch manager to establish this branch." "Wow, Was she really that amazing? Catherine's mouth dropped open as she looked at my mother. Her face was so comically surprised that I almost laughed. That was over 40 years ago. After working at the company until retirement, I left and now run a flower shop. I have little to do with the company now. However, in recognition of her great contributions, we sent her an invitation to the company party every year. She couldn't attend for the past few years, but this year she made it. And yet here we are with this commotion. Even the usually calm George glared at Catherine. This time, George had also accumulated considerable experience. When truly angry, he could be quite intimidating. I'm the daughter of a headquarters manager. Do you really think you can treat me this way? Catherine retorted, though her fear was evident. But it seemed that wouldn't work this time. Don't bring me into this. Now apologize quickly. Yolanda, her last hope, was now cowering and urging her to apologize. Helen is a legendary employee, so even the top executives at headquarters are mindful of her. Plus, it's basic human decency to apologize when you've been rude. You were just causing a scene with me a moment ago. What was that all about? Seeing her mother suddenly change her tune, Catherine was flustered. My mother and I were equally shocked by Yolanda's sudden shift, but she nervously approached my mother with a forced smile. Oh, you must be Helen. I think I saw you at a company party years ago, but you look a bit different, almost like someone else. Are you trying to say I've aged? How kind of you. My mother was clearly annoyed by Yolanda's poor excuse for an apology. Stop saying such nonsense and apologize properly. It's basic human decency, right? Yes, you're right. I am very sorry. Yolanda quickly apologized, but Catherine was clearly not satisfied with this outcome. Mom, you're apologizing too easily. I don't care if she was a legendary employee. She's just an old hag now, Catherine muttered. Though Catherine's words were extremely rude, they also reflected my own curiosity. Did something happen between you and my mother in the past, Yolanda? You seem quite scared of her. No, not at all. Yolanda tried to evade. But my mother seemed to have realized something. Were you the employee who broke the vase? Huh. I don't know anything about the pink vase. Seeing Yolanda's startled reaction, I was convinced my mother was right. How did you know it was pink? My mother didn't mention the color. Oh well, I just thought Helen might like pink, so I guessed. Yolanda offered a flimsy excuse, which was obviously unconvincing. This tendency to make excuses confirmed you were the one who broke the vase, my mother asserted and began to recount the vase incident. Years ago, when I was still working at the company, a young Yolanda got drunk at a party. It was my birthday party, and she shouted, "I don't care about the old lady's birthday," and broke the pink vase I got as a present. That's terrible behavior for an adult. I looked at Yolanda with disdain, and my mother sighed deeply. That night, Yolanda was too drunk to have a conversation, so we sent her home. She came to apologize the next day, but all she did was make excuses, which only made me angrier. I'm terribly sorry about that, Yolanda said, her tone laced with insincerity. Helen scolded me so harshly back then that I even had nightmares about it. To be that scared and yet forget about my mother, I must have looked utterly exasperated. Yolanda, sensing my glare, awkwardly spoke up. I did compensate for the vase, so let's just drop this topic. Oh, Mom, that's so lame. I didn't know you'd change your stance so easily, Catherine muttered, making Yolanda glare at her. After all I've done to protect you, this is what I get. Yolanda snapped. Huh, isn't that what parents are supposed to do? They love their kids more than anything, so it's only natural, Catherine retorted. What an odd, audacious statement. Even though Catherine was outlandish, I thought she had some love for her mother. After all, Yolanda had always protected her, and they seemed close. I assumed she had some gratitude, but clearly she was beyond that in a bad way. Of course, while I stood there stunned, Yolanda began to genuinely get angry. "You think that way? I never thought you'd be so ungrateful." "Like I said, it's just what parents do. I can't feel gratitude," Catherine scoffed. "Think about all the hard work I put in raising you. It wasn't easy." Catherine is indeed a selfish person who still relies on her parents. Living with someone like her for years must have been exhausting. You were neither good at studying nor sports, and you caused trouble at school. Think about how embarrassing that was for me. Yolanda was speaking passionately, with no sign of stopping. Even after high school, I spent money sending you to various places, but nothing lasted. So, I had to use connections to get you a job. You owe me for all the money I spent, Yolanda finally said. Catherine turned red with anger. "Shut up. If you're going to say that, I don't need you anymore." "I can live on my own," Catherine retorted. "Fine then, get out of my house." In the end, Catherine and Yolanda argued and stormed off in different directions. George later promised to properly apologize and take disciplinary action. But my mother and I were just left, exasperated by the Simpsons. Following George's orders, the Simpsons were removed from the venue, and the party ended on a high note. However, I sincerely hope to never spend time with them again. A week later, my mother and I visited a regional branch. This branch is known for its strict work environment, and we were here to meet someone. On our way to the meeting area, we heard a scream. The next moment, a door burst open, and Catherine ran out, hiding behind me. "I can't stand anymore. Stop that man, please," she shouted, pointing to where she came from. A tall man, over 6 feet, emerged. Well, if it isn't Andrew. This was Andrew Garfield, a manager at this regional branch. He used to work at my branch, and we got along well. He's a person with guts, bringing energy and support to the department. Diana and Helen, isn't it? Thank you so much for coming all this way. I apologize for any inconvenience or mess you may have encountered. What happened? I asked. Catherine ran away crying. When I asked for an explanation, Catherine started to cry loudly. Andrew is scary, she sobbed. But Andrew isn't the type to push someone without a reason. I figured Catherine must have done something, so I decided to hear the details in the meeting room. Catherine had been transferred to this regional branch the day after the company party. This place is known for reassigning problematic employees, so Catherine came here for re-education. Being forced to move is so annoying, Catherine grumbled. But she had been given special treatment all this time, so she had no right to complain. She should have been transferred much earlier, but it only happened now because Yolanda's protection was gone. After a week, it was assumed the chaos of the move would settle down, and we planned to receive a proper apology from her. However, we were greeted with this mess instead. Actually, I told her to prepare some documents on the computer and make copies, but she snuck out to a nearby corner. When I scolded her, she started crying and ran to you for help. It's clearly Catherine's fault, Andrew explained. I sighed, and Catherine cried even harder. My salary is down, and I have no motivation. Plus, this place is in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing fun around here, she whined. You're in no position to complain. You should be grateful to still have a job. You could have been fired long ago, Andrew replied. Catherine responded to Andrew's anger by saying, I'm quitting. I can't do this anymore. The company wouldn't miss you. You're a burden here. I couldn't help but speak my mind. Andrew nodded. You're right. This place is for employees with no other options. If you can't put in the effort here, you should quit. That's so harsh, Catherine exclaimed. I don't want to stay here, but being told so bluntly that I'm not wanted is still hurtful. Catherine's reaction was complex, but still annoying. Stop babbling and decide. Quit or work hard, my mother snapped, losing patience. Reluctantly, Catherine said, I'll quit. So it was decided she would quit. Even Andrew, known for handling difficult cases, gave up on her, so it was the best decision. Before you go, apologize for the incident at the party, Andrew prompted. Catherine reluctantly apologized. I'm sorry. Since we couldn't expect a better apology, my mother and I decided to leave it at that. As we headed home, we talked about how awful The Simpsons were. 10 days later, my mother and I were working at the flower shop when suddenly a duo wearing masks burst in. Give us the money. If you resist, you'll regret it, they shouted. Even though they tried to disguise their voices, it was clear they were women. Both my mother and I were startled by the sudden intrusion. This store has security cameras. I'll call the police now, I said. As soon as I said this, they started to panic. Wait, what is that? Is calling the police allowed? Isn't that against the rules? Hearing their voices, I immediately recognized who they were. You two are the Simpsons, aren't you? Your voices are back to normal. As soon as I said that, the two who looked like the Simpsons panicked even more. I was probably right. Oh no. What do we do, Mom? Yolanda said. Don't call me Mom. They'll figure it out. The one who sounded like Yolanda scolded the one who sounded like Catherine, confirming they were indeed the Simpsons. Are you here for money or just to mess with us? I asked. Catherine responded, Sure, we want money, but making you uncomfortable is enough. But you should still give us $100. It's only polite. Yolanda added nonsensically, But I don't want to give even a penny to people who come wearing masks. While this idiotic conversation was happening, my mother appeared. I called the police from the staff phone. The station is nearby, so they'll be here soon. Upon hearing this, Catherine and Yolanda started to freak out. We need to run. We need to run, they said in unison, opening the door only to find 6 passers-by gathered there. This area is fairly busy, and people were bound to notice 2 masked individuals causing a commotion. Hey, they're criminals. Don't let them get away, someone shouted. We'll hold them down. 2 young men entered the store and restrained the Simpsons. Oh no. Help, Mom. The Simpsons cried out pathetically. But other passers-by joined in, and they were quickly subdued. The police arrived shortly after, and they were promptly taken away in a police car. The Simpsons told the police the same motive they had told me earlier. After Catherine was fired, she ran back to Yolanda in tears because Yolanda caused such a scene at the company party, which had a gathering of 1,000 people. She was demoted and eventually resigned. Lost and unsure what to do, they had been hiding at home. The company had been trying to contact them for an apology, but they ignored all communication. Having nowhere to go, they reconciled and decided to stick together. They irrationally blamed my mother and me for their downfall and attempted this foolish crime. We thought we could get some money and leave after a quick scare, but we stayed too long and things got out of hand. We are truly sorry. Catherine and Yolanda came to the store later and apologized. There were no damages, and they seemed genuinely remorseful, so they were let off with a stern warning. However, we still felt nothing but disdain for them. This is all your fault. Stop blaming others and running away. Don't interfere with Diana's life. You're banned from this store. When my mother and I said this, the Simpsons apologized in unison. We are very sorry. We are very sorry. Diana works at the same company as I did, but she passed the entrance exam on her own, without my help. She's been working hard without relying on me. Catherine and Yolanda, it's time for you to be independent. My mother's stern words gave me the courage to speak my mind. Catherine and Yolanda, you are both too selfish. From now on, stop blaming others and learn to stand on your own. Otherwise, you'll remain unhappy. Yes, yes, they responded meekly and left with their heads hung low. Finally, peace returned to our lives. 2 months later, I was walking near a park and saw the Simpsons arguing loudly. You're not my mother. Go wherever you want. Fine, you can't live on your own anyway. They shouted at each other. We're practically homeless. Why don't we have any money? Oh, right, you spend it all on brand name goods. Those were rewards for myself. I spent money on your education. They were clearly arguing over money, as indicated by the statements implying a lack of funds. As I thought, how disruptive they were. 3 rough-looking young men started yelling at them. Hey, shut up. Sorry. The Simpsons fled in fear, but the young men pursued them. Don't run away. The young one's kind of cute. I'd like her to be my girlfriend, one of the young men said. This made me wonder what would happen if they couldn't escape. But if I helped them, they'd probably ask for money, so I quickly left the park and went home. Meanwhile, I continued working at the company. Recently, I was promoted to department manager in recognition of my achievements. Even though it's at the branch level, my salary has significantly increased. With Catherine and Yolanda gone, work has become much easier and more enjoyable. George, our branch manager, no longer gives special treatment to any employee and maintains proper discipline within the office. With the troublemakers gone, he's visibly happier. My mother still runs her flower shop and seems as happy as ever, surrounded by flowers. Oh, this flower is about to bloom. It's going to be beautiful. Seeing my mother's joy fills me with happiness too. It's an ordinary scene, but I hope this simple happiness lasts for a long time as I continue living my life.